Dr. Kofi, academia plays a key role in ushering students into the digital world. Taking into consideration the minister's speech earlier, we have support here from the Guyana Digital School as well. From your vantage point at the University of Guyana and through the Digital School of Guyana, what are some key initiatives that are currently underway within the Ministry of Education to prepare students for a more digital, data-driven future?
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. There are a number of initiatives that I would summarize in the following points. So first, there is a drive towards digital and hybrid learning models. The digital school shows that, which particularly during COVID, you realize that even across the world, and not just here in Guyana, we were sort of forced to have these digital environments where students could learn. And since then, we've realized the need for this because one of the very important things, apart from COVID, is that we realize that it doesn't limit students' learning with respect to geography. So it increases access, so students in hinterland communities or students who are not able to make it to school on a particular day can continue to learn, so there's less disruption in learning. So looking at how those models work and finding specific kinds of courses and content that can be delivered in a digital environment. A number of schools do have smart boards and smart classrooms, and so we're gradually integrating those into the school system. Secondly, upgrading of programs, not just adding more programs. So the University of Guyana, for example, there's a master's now in AI, where you can go to the university and learn specifically about AI and AI integration, whether for business or in general life. But at the Faculty of Engineering and Technology, we have revamped programs such as the Mechanical Engineering program, the Civil Engineering program, the Electrical Engineering program. And electrical in particular is very computing heavy, computer heavy, and digital heavy. And so we have revamped those programs to make them ABET accredited and also modern. And so they involve various aspects of dealing with digital information and digital data, and learn to understand the fundamentals of handling data. Another key aspect of this is digital collecting information digitally and working in a digital environment gives us the ability to look at data-driven policy. And so now we can actually use information in a way that drives education policy. So looking at student data and performance data, whether we want to be in areas like math or the sciences, or in other areas of the school, both at the university and in schools across the country. At the university, for example, there is a student records management system. So you can begin to mine data in terms of how students are performing in particular courses and in particular environments, whether they're performing well in a face-to-face environment versus a digital environment. And that information can then be used to update policy and push forward. So I think overall there is a major drive to utilize information, not just to add more technology to the mix, but really to integrate technology in how we already deliver education and improve on that education.
All right, thank you. So it seems there is definitely more than concrete support to digitize both at the tertiary level and leading up to the tertiary level. So the support doesn't stop at graduation, but I ask you this as well. There's a lot of purportness that leaving school, students are prepared for the digital world, they're not prepared for the workforce. What can the private sector play to bridge this digital gap between schools and to work?
So I'm really glad I have this opportunity to talk to the private sector in both capacities. And I think that it's important to me that the private sector isn't simply a consumer of graduates from the school system and the university system, but that the private sector becomes a co-partner in producing graduates. And so one of the programs that we launched last year at the university, particularly in the Faculty of Engineering and Technology, is a workforce development program that allows students to receive instruction directly from companies.
And so it starts from the very first year right up to their final year. It starts with things like critical thinking, problem solving, tools that are being used within companies. We have worked with companies to say, bring those tools to us at the university so that students can get training on those very tools, whether they're digital, whether they're machine tools, whether it's manufacturing, so that students can begin to learn those well before they show up into your organization.
Yeah.
Another important part of this is the internships that we provide for students. And I think this goes across the board, not just for university students, but even for high school students who do work study. I think there has to be a partnership between educational institutions and the private sector that has the technology, has the know-how, is continuing to evolve to allow students to have access to those technologies so that they are prepared to perform in that environment when they're in the workplace.
Thank you. That was a very on-point answer. And I want to make this a call to the private sector members in the room. As Dr. Kofi said, for these students to enter into the workforce in a manner that we want them to, we need to provide the schools, we need to provide the Ministry of Education, and we need to engage them with what are some softwares, what are some tools that we're using. I'll now move on to Ms. McPherson. From a national perspective, as Guyana adopts these smarter operational systems, digital schools, businesses are digitizing more, they're using ERP software, accounting software. What are the most practical cybersecurity risks that both public and private organizations should be concerned with right now?
Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for that question. Oftentimes, we tend to look at things in a generalized manner, and we want to focus in on the risk. When we think about risk and we think about things becoming digitized, there's a heavy reliance on technology. There is a push that technology can accomplish everything. It can accomplish a lot, yes. But we have to remember things like the people aspect of it, as well as processes. And if proper processes are not in place, then we will not be able to utilize technology in a way that can bring the kind of digitization that we need. When we think about risk, because of the heavy reliance on technology, people think that, or implementers think that, okay, this technology can do everything, and so we don't need to train our people to know what to look for, to know what are some of the indicators that it is doing what it's supposed to do or it's not. There's also the issue of the extended attack surface, meaning that as we digitize, as we interconnect, as we allow suppliers to engage with our core systems, we find that we are unable to, if we don't have certain systems in place to ensure that the suppliers themselves have proper mechanisms in place to protect their systems from being infiltrated, then our systems can be affected as well. There's the whole issue of operational disruption. Technology, heavy reliance on technology can fail, and there are measures, control measures that can be put in place to ensure that when it fails, or when there is an attack, cyber attack, for example, what do we do? How can we ensure business resilience? How can we ensure business continuity? And so those are just a few things I'd want to say foremost.
I want to add a follow-up question to that. In this room right now, we have a lot of senior management members, and we also have a lot of school students. We have general members of society. What are some practical tips you can give in terms of managing some of these risks that you just shared, both at all three levels that I just mentioned, for the senior level, coming along all the way to the students that they can look out for in managing cybersecurity? And
thank you very much. There are three things I like to focus on. The first is governance. So at the very hem of the organization, it's important for the executives to be aware of what are the level of exposure, what risks exist, what risk we're taking by embracing digital transformation, not for the sake of avoiding the risk, but for the sake of ensuring mechanisms are in place to properly manage those risks. there's the issue of accountability. So we implement a particular platform to execute a business process. What are the levels of accountability we need to ensure are in place so that we can ensure that that process is operating the way in which it's designed to? We have to think about controls as well. Some of you have compliance obligations, but we need to think beyond compliance. What can we do to ensure we have operational resilience? And so basic controls that ought to be in place is like, for example, having visibility of our assets. We are using data to process, we're using data to fulfill our mandate. How do we ensure that the data is properly protected? How do we ensure that there is no leakage of that data? How do we ensure that the people that we have interacting with our systems are in place? And so one of the key things we usually put forward is the importance of backups. As simple as you see it, it's very important to ensure operational resiliency. If you don't have backups in place, if you don't test those backups regularly, if you don't ensure that is optimal, then if there's an technology failure or a cyber risk, then the organization can suffer data loss. And data loss means that you won't be able to provide key services to your customers on time. You won't be able to have your services available when they need it, and it can affect the reputation of your organization. So, in addition to that, it's important to use risk-based control mechanisms based on your sector you're in. So there's some specific for different sectors, whether you're in finance, whether you're in manufacturing, whether you're in logistics or health. And so it's important to ensure that you can identify what are some of the risk-based approaches to managing my operational processes. Incident response is something that is not always taken on board as important. So it's important for us to have a proactive approach to dealing with incidents, because in the world that we live in, because of the heavy reliance on technology, because of the attack surface in terms of cyber incidents occurring, if we do not plan for incidents, then when it happens, our approach to dealing with it will be largely reactive. And so one of the things is to establish a clear incident response plan. How do we ensure we can detect incidents? How do we ensure that we can mitigate those incidents? How do we ensure we can escalate? Who do we escalate to? If it's an incident that is public facing, how do we manage the PR aspect of it? So those are some practical things. Of course, understanding legal communication, understanding who to inform when certain kinds of incidents occur. So those are all things that has to be thought through. There's no one fit response. It has to do with how your organization is configured, what you see as priority, what you see is important in terms of the delivery of your services to your customer base.
All right, thank you, Ms. McPherson. I just want to go back at the end to Dr. Dalrymple. He has to step out for a minute, so I'm just going to ask him one question before he leaves. Given all these risks that Ms. McPherson just shared, and given all that we've shared earlier with the rapidly evolving digital tools and technologies, how is the Ministry of Education as well preparing the educators in this rapidly evolving world?
First, let me apologize. I'm late for another engagement, so I appreciate you making the modification. So, as I said, the ministry has actually engaged a number of tools. There's the Electronic Management Information System, which is being rolled out to various schools. Simple things like attendance in schools, we want to move that to a digital platform so that you collect information. I mean, if a student isn't in school, you know they can't learn, so being able to track things like that. The Guyana Digital School, as we mentioned, and then there are various apps that are being deployed by the ministry. So when we think about all of this, as I said before, the idea is not to replace educators. Um, the idea is how we train educators, and that's one of the things the ministry is focusing on through CPC and through various schools. Schools are being trained on the technology that is being deployed in the ministry, because we still recognize that educators are the most influential aspect of students' education, and across the country. And so training in AI tools and how to use AI. The most important aspect of this to us is not just teaching, but teaching trainers and teachers how to create learning experiences, and using digital platform and digital tools to be able to do that. And we think that teachers are sort of the guardians of this, but also designing technology in a safe way that, as my colleague mentioned here, making sure that they're safe and putting safeguards in place, integrating parents and teachers in that process, even in how students are using the technology as part of the school system. So the goal here is to really engage the educators as an important part of how we deploy the technology across the entire education ministry and in the country, so that they can help to provide sort of that oversight in terms of how the technology is being used. And as I said, we've seen things in the media about even how sometimes children are way more advanced than the educators. I heard a story yesterday about a student in another country who put a chip in his head to be able to pass his exams. And so it's really pointing to the fact that as a ministry and as a country and as educators, we've got to stay ahead of the curve with respect to kind of where our students are learning as well. And so it really means that we have to continue to train teachers. And this is one of the things that we're doing, particularly at CPC, and keeping them updated in the technology as well.
All right. Well, as you know, they say a system is only as strong as its weakest point, and thank you for providing the comprehensive approach that the ministry is taking.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time as well. Anthony, Guyana is under a lot of pressure to modernize quickly. PwC is an international brand. From your experience, what is an international best practice that we should be cautious about adopting wholesale?
Yeah, so I think what you need to be cautious about is adopting like these approaches that don't necessarily fit your unique situation, circumstances. So for instance, a lot of countries in the Caribbean, Trinidad to some extent, we see these huge digitization projects, and we often cite examples like Estonia, and we say, okay, we want to do what Estonia did in Estonia in the Caribbean. That is all well and good, but you should not import these models wholesale, because these models fail to take into account the unique features of the country. So for example, Guyana is vast. A huge portion of the population lives in rural areas. They may not have internet connectivity. So designing systems to take those things into account is key. Also, looking at the data landscape in Guyana. So where are institutions at from a data governance standpoint, for instance? These models, the leading class models, assume a certain level of sophistication when it comes to data governance, manual processes, and whatnot. So taking these models wholesale, putting them into the context of Guyana without taking into consideration your unique circumstances is actually setting you up to failure. So what should be done is to analyze the unique needs of the population of Guyana, and based on those unique needs, then design systems that fit you perfectly. So kind of hand-in-glove systems.
Okay, thank you. As you may or may not know, technology does not complement just large businesses or small businesses. I'm coming towards Anand here because the Beharry group, one of the largest groups in Guyana, has recently made an entrance into the IT sector. I would defer to Anand here to tell us a bit what are some efforts that the group has taken to digitize its operations, one, and two, what is the vision really in the cybersecurity sector as that we've laid out?
Okay, great. Thank you, Govindra. Good morning, everyone. Yes, we recently pivoted into the tech space. It's a new industry vertical for us. This is an area that's is of immense interest to the group. Tech, digital transformation. Tech is a critical enabler of our 10x growth strategy for 2030. It's a very ambitious growth strategy, and for us to be able to get to that 10x growth objective, technology is a key part of that. And so we looked at the business, across all the businesses, within the group, all 14 operating companies, to better understand how do we achieve that growth objective. And a common theme that came out is technology, digital transformation. Some of our companies are a bit more advanced. So for example, with GBTI, through that, you can do loan origination online, and there are a few other products. We've got internet banking, we've got a Go Banking app, and so that's a bit more advanced. In other companies, it's not as advanced. So, for example, in the manufacturing companies, we want to be able to leverage robotics and IoTs to be able to increase our productivity in those businesses. So we took an approach whereby we did an assessment and tried to figure out where is it that we want to go and what is it that we need to do. And so I think a critical part of that is understanding your North Star. And once you have that understanding of what your North Star is, then you're better able to understand the gaps to be able to get there. And so for us, the first part in terms of doing the assessment is a critical piece. And we, again, because of our ambitious growth target, we need to do this in a really rapid pace. And so we sought a strategic partner to be able to help us to do that. Hence the joint venture with Amber Group from Jamaica. It's a group that it's pretty much involved in all the sectors, the 5 sectors that we were originally in, and so they've got some immense solutions. So we've partnered with them not just to help with the transformation of our business, but we see this as a critical growth sector. It's a new pivot, as I mentioned, and when you look at technology in the space that we're in globally, it's a sector with immense growth, and it's an area that we've identified as part of our 10x strategy as a new industry pivot. PwC, incidentally, their 29th global CEOs surveys, 44% of CEOs are looking at new industry pivots, and technology is one of the leading areas as an adjacent industries that CEOs are looking to pivot in. With respect to cybersecurity, I think that's something that we all as businesses have to think about, whether small or large. That's something that we're all impacted by. I know Latin America, the Caribbean has, it's one of the regions with the highest rates of attack, and so that speaks to the need to be resilient and ensuring that you've got the right infrastructure, the right gateways to be able to secure your business. And so I think oftentimes we don't think holistically about cybersecurity and how interconnected we are. And so that's something that as businesses, we need to take stock of. And as Guyana gets more internationalized, we're increasingly going to become under threat. So it's something that we need to spend some time on and figure out how do we protect our businesses, ensuring that we have the right software, cybersecurity insurance is not something that's here as yet, but that's another, area to be able to protect your business. So I think with all the opportunities that's happening in the market, digital transformation, it's an absolute must. It's a space that, again, whether small or large, it's a space that everyone needs to get on board on and figure out how do you position your business to access the opportunities in the market, and not just the opportunities in the market here, but also further afield.
All right, thank you. I am now going to open the room for any questions, open the floor for any questions.
We do have a lot of questions that were posted online. Of course, you can scan the QR code and ask your questions. These are really good questions. I've been scanning them, about 17, and many of them were directed for the Ministry of Education. But since Dr. Kofi is not here, I'm just gonna go to a few others. This one we received got a lot of upvotes. So the question is, have you guys acknowledged what driven AI systems do to our environment? And in what way does it support economic stability? Who would want to tackle that question?
So,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So in terms of AI systems and the environment, this is a hot topic, mainly because of the energy usage of data centers. So AI is driven by these massive data centers, and these massive data centers obviously consume a lot of energy. Energy inevitably has an impact on the environment, depending on the type of energy used. Lately, though, there has been a trend towards cleaner forms of energy for data centers, specifically nuclear energy, with the development of modular nuclear power plants, which a lot of the hyperscalers, companies like Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and whatnot, are investing in. So, I mean, it's definitely a concern, but I think the concern is being addressed or has started to be addressed by these hyperscalers in terms of the type of energy used for these data centers. Another trend that is kind of reducing the energy requirements on data centers is the essentially moving away from centralized data centers to on-device compute. So there's been a huge trend towards doing compute or inference for AI, which is actually the execution of the prompts, away from centralized data centers to localized devices, which leads to less energy use and inevitably less impact on the environment.
All right. And I think this next question, I'm going to direct it to Mr. Hirallal. It's regarding our local banking sector. And it goes, is Guyana getting an integrated online payment system so local banks can be included and be able to accept online payment and credit cards? You can answer that.
okay, great. Yes. So that's something on the cards for Bank of Guyana, working on an integrated payment gateway. I know there's some advanced discussions with respect to that. It's not final as yet, but it's something that it's part of the Bank of Guyana strategy for 2027, I think 2025 to 2027. So the last I checked, it's they're working on a model that they're hoping to roll out very soon. So that's going to be coming.
That's good news. Ms. McPherson, I think this one is directed for you. Many organizations in Guyana still rely on legacy systems and limited budgets. How do you balance the push for stronger cybersecurity standards?
Wow. Thank you very much for that question. It's a very interesting question, and a lot of persons approach us with those kinds of questions. How do we really cater for that with a limited budget? As I mentioned, cybersecurity is not just about technology, it's about people, process, as well as the technology. In cases where there are legacy systems, one would have to analyze the risk involved in continuing to use those legacy systems. And if there is a business reason why the legacy systems may still have to be used, maybe they incorporate with some sort of operational plant and you really can't change it out immediately, then and the next best thing is having that system segmented, meaning that it's not accessible via the internet at as a bare minimum. It's putting compensating controls in place. One of the things, another thing I often say is that as you invest in technology, you try to leverage it to the maximum. So as very rudimentary as antivirus, I've seen some organizations just putting it in place there and having no one to monitor it and having nothing set up to generate alerts, having no centralized system that you can, manage it properly so that if there is any indicator of compromise, somebody will see it, somebody will review the log, somebody will see, somebody will act on it. So it's putting very basic things in place to ensure that you can optimize whatever little investment you have. The whole thrust of it is protecting what is important to you, your data, your value that you deliver to your customer base. How can you ensure that those things to the minimum are properly managed and protected despite the limited budget? You have to decide where your priority lies, what your risks are, and how best you would mitigate those risks.
All right, sticking to you, what would you suggest as a measure to prevent cyber breach while connecting to public systems where health data is being stored and transferred?
Okay, thanks for that question. So there are different things you can do. So if it's an individual connecting, then having VPN, which is a virtual private network, you use it to connect. I'm just sharing for maybe somebody in the audience may want to know. You use it to connect securely on a public network. If you're connecting, if you're a business or let's say clinic connecting to the database, in addition to VPNs, there are usually multi-factor authentication. You have different levels of proving that you are the person who you claim to be interacting with that data set. So there are a number of measures depending on the situation that can be implemented to ensure the security of your device and of the data that you're trying to access.